It was less of a red wave and more of a sprinkle in Cape Town, with smaller sporadic protests as EFF members took to the streets to protest the crippling power cuts in the country, as well as calling for the resignation of President Cyril Ramaphosa. But city officials were not taking any chances and had security personnel out in full force. Let's get more from the Western Cape Community Safety and Police Oversight MEC Reagen Allen. Thank you very much, MEC, for speaking to us this evening. So it did turn out to be a wet squib in many areas. Can you give us an overview of protest action in the Western Cape and which areas saw the most concentrated number of protesters?
Anli, thank you so much for this particular opportunity. I would firstly want to commend all law enforcement agencies, the South African Police Service, our Metro Police, including our leave officers and disaster management staff and emergency responders for working so hard to ensure that this particular protest did not descend into anarchy here in the Western Cape. We have seen, and like you have indicated, stone throwing incidences, and there were sporadic incidences, but all districts within the Western Cape have reported that these were minor and it was dealt with accordingly. We have seen 4 arrests that were made, 2 in the city of Cape Town and 2 outside of the city of Cape Town. We have, and I've just received information now, that the last amount of protesters in the city of Cape Town is currently at the departure point in order to leave the CBD at this particular time. But we were well prepared.
I do apologize. Carry on.
We were well prepared for the day. We've had regular engagements. It was an integrated approach. We've had engagements with our police commissioner because we understood these particular threats were serious and we wanted to ensure that the economy remains open. Only but I would be remiss to not mention the following. The high visibility that we saw today in the city of Cape Town, together in the entire province, is what we actually want to see each and every day, especially in our gang-ridden communities. And I must mention that the deployed resources that was allocated for today comes at a cost because a number of the officers were either on leave or on duty, and they were called to then be on the beat. And the record will reflect that as the Western Cape, we have consistently called for appropriate budget to be allocated to the South African Police Service in order to meet our required needs and to ensure that we can properly implement our policing needs and priorities here in the province.
So I see you've anticipated one of my questions. We've heard for a number of people, leaders across the country today saying exactly that. Why can we not see this kind of deployment on every day where South Africans require the protection of the SAPS? Why do we see the kind of GBV figures that we do if we have the kind of resources to be deployed? And you're putting it down to squarely to budget and obviously numbers of policemen available at any given stage. I'm assuming that all available boots were on deck today, if I can use that metaphor. What responses have you gotten from national government when you've put these budgetary requirements to them? Because settling for I'm sorry, we don't have the budget at this stage, puts citizens of the Western Cape in danger.
Andy, I think it will be important to mention that our National Police Commissioner is on record to indicate that SAPS does not have the resources to fulfill its mandate. So we understand that SAPS itself is also indicating that. We've also seen that in 2020, only when I was gobsmacked, when budget, and it was 11 billion rand, was taken from the South African Police Service, from Justice, and from Education in order to bail out SAA during that particular time in 2020. And it was resources, budgetary resources, that was taken from key departments like the South African Police Service. We have less officers now than we had in 2012. So we've always maintained that the appropriate budget should be allocated because our men and women in blue, our dedicated men and women in blue here in the Western Cape, are severely under-resourced. So we have consistently made that call for budget to be implemented and for that budget to actually speak to the needs and the priorities in our engagements, we have often heard that there is X amount of funding available, and this directly from the national minister is that it is then appropriate, it is in a portion to each and every province, but it has never been enough. Hence, we are saying, and even if I look at this particular march, it's against load shedding, it's against matters that we in the Western Cape have also advocated for. So we are fully in terms of what we need, and national government should ideally look towards the needs of our country and make sure that budgets are appropriated instead of a bloated cabinet at the national level. There's funding that could have been used in order to help and assist our dedicated men and women here in blue. So it's definitely skewed budget allocations as well.
MEC, can you tell us firstly what was the cost of the additional deployment to keep the citizens of the Western Cape safe today? And secondly, can you tell us whether you think it's fair that that cost, that bill will be laid squarely at the door of the taxpayer, many of who did not partake in today's march and who were prevented from going to their places of work, not by intimidation or harassment, but out of fear of violence and intimidation?
Anli, I've also preempted one of your potential questions, and that was one that I've had in the back of my mind. So even at 10 o'clock today, I've already requested the full amount in order to ascertain what was actually spent. So I am awaiting that particular feedback, and I will surely make that public because it is the taxpayers' money ultimately. We have always maintained that funding and money and budget should be spent where it is most needed. And I will definitely make that information publicly because I've asked for that directly and we have not received the actual amount as yet. But it was all boots on deck. It was also where we've had via our national joints priority, where the SANDF was also deployed to all provinces, including the Western Cape. And from where I'm sitting, I will definitely then make that information available.
You haven't answered the second part of my question, whether you think it's fair that taxpayers are going to be footing this bill.
It's definitely not fair because what we have seen, Anli, is that whenever there is threats of violence, whenever there is potential for looting, considering that COVID-19 was a difficult time for businesses, we wanted to ensure that our economy can continue to grow. Anli, you will also be reminded that in the last quarter, 98% of all jobs was actually created here in the Western Cape. So we wanted to ensure that we actually keep the economy going. So it is definitely not fair, but also secondly, we must see that this is in a context where the budget should be appropriated so that our SAPS officers can actually have the boots on the ground. And we would never want to waste budget in any form. That's why we were so clear in terms of removing over 7,000 tires, which was at clear intersections. It was hidden behind bushes because there was even petrol at some of these places, which could have been used to have further damage, and that would have been a further cost on the taxpayer as well.
Well, thank you so much for that update on today's protests and security efforts in the Western Cape. That was Western Cape Community Safety Police Oversight MEC Reagen Allen.